This 2022 photo shows 40-year-old Russian mother Anna Uskova moments before she jumped into a frozen river. She was apparently following a Christian Orthodox tradition of Epiphany and believed that jumping into the frigid water would rid her of sin. However, she jumped in at a bad angle and was quickly swept away by the powerful current, trapping her under the ice. Her husband immediately jumped in to rescue her while their children screamed in horror. But his efforts were unsuccessful and her body was recovered 10 days later. Earlier this year, inmates at a Miami prison managed to birth a child without ever even meeting each other face to face. 23-year-old Joanne DePaz and 29-year-old Daisy Link, both imprisoned for separate murder charges, started talking to each other through the air vents before falling in love and eventually wanting kids. Using a makeshift line made out of bedding, they passed Joanne's erectoplasm through the vents, while Daisy used a yeast infection applicator to inseminate herself. Against all odds, the plan worked, and the baby was born healthy. The pair are now in different prisons, while Joanne's mother is raising their baby girl. In 2004, 40-year-old Marion Carver set out on a week-long Alaskan cruise by herself. Just 2 days into the voyage, her steward noticed that she was missing, but was told by his supervisor to just do your job and forget about it. Therefore, the woman's disappearance went unreported, and at the end of the cruise, most of her belongings were allegedly disposed of. Carver was only reported missing by her father more than a week after she disappeared, when she never returned home from her trip. To this day, no trace of her has ever been found, as her fate remains a total mystery. In 1963, a stray tuxedo cat named Félicette became the first and only cat to go to space. She was launched by French scientists and spent 15 minutes in a rocket before returning to Earth. Colombian man Christian Montenegro, who claims to be engaged to a ragdoll, has revealed that his fiancée Natalia is pregnant with their third child. He also shared his plans for a dream wedding with his beloved partner, with whom he already has a son and daughter. When questioned about his bizarre relationship, Montenegro replied, "If it weren't for the dolls, I'd be more alone than anyone. At least I have something." And Christian certainly isn't the first person to fall in love and start a family with a rag doll. In 2022, Maravone Marias had an actual wedding ceremony with her ragdoll husband Marcelo that was attended by 250 people. But the woman has recently expressed serious doubt in their relationship after she caught her husband cheating on her with another woman at a local motel. Russian scientist Anatoly Bugorsky worked as a physicist on the largest particle accelerator in the Soviet Union. In 1978, he was checking a malfunctioning piece of equipment when one of the safety mechanisms failed, causing a high-energy proton beam to pass directly through his head. He reportedly saw a flash brighter than 1,000 suns, but didn't feel any pain. The beam had burned through parts of his skin, bone, and the brain tissue underneath, causing the left half of his face to swell up beyond recognition. Since it was believed that he received far more than a fatal dose of radiation, Bugorsky was taken to a clinic in Moscow where doctors could document his certain death. But miraculously, Bugorsky survived, completed his PhD, and continued working as a particle physicist. Nearly 50 years later, he's still alive to this day with relatively minor symptoms. While investigating the illegal shark fin trade for the BBC special Gordon's Shark Bait in 2011, Gordon Ramsay and his crew were attacked by a group of men linked to drug networks in Costa Rica. They were held at gunpoint, doused with petrol, and told they would be killed if they continued filming. The shark fin trade continues to flourish to this day due to the high demand of shark fin soup, resulting in about 100 million sharks being killed every year. This was the obituary of Kathleen Demlow, who doesn't appear to be missed by her family. In 1988, Hawaiian musician Israel Kana'i Kamakawi-Vole called the owner of a recording studio at 3 a.m. when he was so eager to record his new idea. Despite having obviously closed for the night, the studio owner agreed since Israel was such a nice guy. Within 15 minutes, they recorded his ukulele rendition of Somewhere Over the Rainbow in just one take. Sadly, Israel struggled with morbid obesity throughout his life, at one point weighing over 750 pounds. After enduring several hospitalizations due to respiratory and cardiac issues, the legend would end up dying of respiratory failure at the young age of 38. In 2015, a stray cat named Masha found an abandoned baby inside a box in the freezing cold streets of Russia. She climbed in to keep the baby warm while meowing to get the attention of passers-by, thus saving the baby's life. In 1985, Clive Wearing suffered a severe case of amnesia after a viral infection caused damage to the hippocampus of his brain. Ever since then, his memory only lasts about 20 seconds before completely resetting since his brain is incapable of forming new memories. He spends all day thinking he just woke up from the coma he was in 1985. Clive often gets very frustrated in the middle of conversations and can't even remember what food he's eating by the time it reaches his mouth. When asked what it's like to have this awful condition, Clive replied, "It's exactly the same as being dead. To be dead is easy. You don't do anything at all. I've never been bored or upset. I've never been anything at all. It's exactly the same as death. No dreams even. Day and night, the same." In 1994, 13-year-old Texas boy Nicholas Barkley went missing after playing basketball with some friends. 3 years later, he was found in Spain and reunited with his family, but something was very off. The boy who came back had darker hair, brown eyes instead of blue, and a French accent, while looking much older than Nicholas would have been at the time. But perhaps blinded by grief, the Barkley family accepted this boy without question despite these major differences. To be fair, he claimed his kidnappers had taken him to France, dyed his hair, and changed his eye color to hide his identity. But a private investigator would soon reveal the boy's true identity as Frederick Borden, a 23-year-old Frenchman with a history of impersonating missing kids. Borden had apparently been searching for love and affection that he never received as a child. Known as the Chameleon, he's assumed over 500 false identities throughout his life, including those of orphans. Meanwhile, the true fate of Nicholas Barkley remains unknown to this day. During a trip to Paris in 2007, Prince Harry had his driver go through the same tunnel that his mother Princess Diana died in, at the same speed her car was going at the time, as he was trying to find closure for her death. He later described the attempt as ill-conceived, saying it only brought him more pain as it was just a regular tunnel that nobody should have ever died in. 2. College wrestlers Kendall Cummings and Brad Lowry were hiking in the woods near Yellowstone when Lowry was suddenly attacked by a grizzly bear. Kendall yelled and threw rocks at the bear to no avail, so he decided to jump on its back. This allowed Lowry to escape and get help while Kendall wrestled the bear until it ran off. Despite several deep wounds, both men were rescued and survived. A 22-year-old woman from Ireland was recently left with severe internal injuries after her butt plug was pulled through her body during an MRI scan. She apparently believed she was safe to insert it before the procedure, believing the plug was made entirely of silicone. But it actually contained a metal core, causing it to react to the scanner's powerful magnets. She's expected to recover in the hospital, but this is why doctors always say you should never wear a butt plug while getting an MRI. In 2013, a Swedish prisoner escaped from the facility because he had a severe toothache and was denied medical care. He broke out, saw a dentist who pulled out his tooth, and then turned himself back in. This was the last photo ever taken of Marco Siffredi, the first man to descend Mount Everest on a snowboard. He was attempting his second descent in 2002 when Sherpas urged him not to go due to bad weather conditions, but Siffredi ignored their warnings and was never seen again. In 1999, Little League baseball player Kevin Stephen was hit in the chest by a baseball bat, causing his heart to suddenly stop. Luckily, off-duty nurse Penny Brown was in attendance and saved the boy's life by giving him CPR. 7 years later, Penny Brown was choking at a restaurant when one of the workers rushed over to give her the Heimlich maneuver, thus saving her life. That worker was Kevin Stephen. During the Cold War, the CIA highly considered using condoms as a weapon against Russia. They wanted to drop extra-large condoms that were labeled small on Soviet territory to lower their morale, but the plan was eventually scrapped. King Philip V of Spain and his court were known to play a game that translated to the imperturbable. A bunch of naked men would sit around a table covered by a cloth, while a lady underneath the table would put her mouth around one of their willies. The rest of the players would have to guess who was receiving it, and if their guess was correct, the player who was getting socked would have to leave the game. The game was won by the player who could climax without any of the other players noticing. Apparently, this game was very popular among French nobility in the 18th century. When Blackbeard blockaded Charleston Harbor in 1718, he wasn't seeking gold, but instead demanded mercury. Up until the 20th century, it was widely believed that injecting mercury into the urethra was a cure for syphilis. After a long stay in the brothels of Barbados, most of the men in Blackbeard's fleet were infested with STDs. Thus, Blackbeard captured Charleston Harbor to try and make his male parts feel better. The first ever reliable pregnancy test involved injecting a woman's urine into the skin of a female African clawed frog. If the woman was pregnant, the frog would lay eggs within a few hours. George Michael, who's known for the Christmas classic Last Christmas I Gave You My Heart, died on Christmas Day in 2016 from a heart condition. Many of the indoor scenes in the movie Elf were shot inside an abandoned mental asylum in Canada. The Grinch as a kid was played by an 18-year-old actor with dwarfism. Sadly, he died of heart failure just 2 years after the movie released. Known as the girl who can't feel pain, Ashlyn Blocker was born with a congenital insensitivity to pain, a rare condition characterized by her body's inability to experience physical pain. While it may sound like a superpower, this condition has left Ashlyn without the natural warning signals that typically alert people to danger. From a young age, she accidentally injured herself countless times, forcing her parents to be constantly vigilant to prevent serious harm. In one case, she ran on a badly fractured ankle for several days before her parents finally realized that something was wrong. Here's a 1955 photo of actor James Dean pretending to sleep inside of an open casket at a furniture store in Indiana. After a fatal car crash just 7 months later, Dean would end up laying in a casket permanently. In 2010, 55-year-old Greg Flanagan was found dead on the floor inside of his locked hotel room in Texas. There were no signs of a break-in or robbery, as Greg's wallet was still in his back pocket with cash inside. He had suffered no obvious external injuries, but had massive internal damage, including broken ribs, damage to his liver and intestines, and a hole through his heart. Flanagan's death was soon ruled an unsolved homicide, despite coroners having no idea what actually happened to him. After an 8-month investigation, it was revealed that he died from a 1-in-a-million series of events. A drunk guest in the next hotel room accidentally fired a single bullet through the wall while playing with his pistol. While Flanagan was laying down watching Iron Man 2, the bullet hit him directly in the scrotum and continued up through his body and through his heart, likely killing him moments after he stood up and stumbled toward the door. Lance Moeller was later sentenced to 10 years in prison for his neighbor's bizarre accidental murder. During the Sandy Hook school shooting in 2012, 27-year-old elementary teacher Vicky Soto died a hero while saving her students from the gunman. After hearing gunshots from outside, she quickly hid her first graders in the classroom closet and refused to hide herself. When the shooter came to her room, she told him that her students were in the gym, after which some of the kids ran from their hiding spots in a panic. The shooter opened fire, but Soto shielded the children with her body as they escaped, saving 11 young lives while sacrificing her own. Nicknamed the Saint of Auschwitz, Maximilian Kolbe was a Polish Catholic priest who offered to die in the place of a concentration camp prisoner who was condemned to die of starvation. After surviving for several weeks, Kolbe was eventually killed by an injection of acid. The man he sacrificed himself for lived on for another 50+ years and dedicated his life to telling Kolbe's story. In 1982, the Pope canonized Kolbe and declared him a martyr of charity. Studies have shown that obese drivers are 80% more likely to die in a car accident than drivers who are not overweight. Earlier this year, 2 Brazilian influencers drowned during a yacht party after the boat was capsized by a massive wave. The women likely would have survived the tragedy had they worn life jackets, but reportedly didn't want to ruin their tans in selfies. If you were to remove all the blood vessels in your body and tie them together, they would stretch across the entire circumference of the Earth 2 to 4 times.